you?
Oh my gosh. What other answer is there outside of the world is burning, you know? Uh,
Yes, surviving vaguely by your fingernails.
I've been kind of using that as a litmus test whenever I'm encountering new people because I still use like I use queer dating apps and like I put in my bio like I'm new to my city and I want to meet more like local queers and so I'm prioritizing friendship. And when like the opening lines are, "Hey, how have you been?" I'm like, "How have I been?"
Not to that question anymore in today's society.
Don't you know? Aren't you on a queer dating app? Don't you know how everything's been? But like, no, that's been the scary thing is that there's been a lot of like privileged people online that like don't feel the same amount of fear as a lot of other people. And so that if I answer like that, they don't know what I'm talking about. And for me, that's a red flag. I'm like, you have no idea what a person like me would be afraid right now.
Yeah, right now is really unveiling who has a full invisibility ignorance cloak of privilege.
100%. It's been very scary to me. I I think that like what I try to do to be like super genuine about it is like if somebody asks me how have I been, I'm like, well, it's been rough, with like everything going on politically, but I'm doing my best. Because like it's hard because what a downer. What a downer to try to like meet strangers. And like every time somebody says how are you, you're like womp womp womp.
It's awkward when you're trying to flirt and you're like, so how well are your antidepressants insulating you from the current state of affairs of the world?
For as long as we have them, as long as the Maha movement will allow us to have the antidepressants in the first place. Lord,
Yeah.
every day is a new threat. Every day I read the news and I'm like, that's not right. I think just before this call, I had read that in the executive order of the Maha is so funny. That is such a funny thing to say out of my mouth. The Make America Healthy Again thing. Um, it's Maha. It's like a Amanda Bynes children's TV show kind of a sound.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's where you got it from.
but they said that that autism is a dire threat to the American people and the American way of life, and I'm like, oh dear, this sounds
Detect my friends as a national security threat now.
it's scary, but it's wild. It all sounds way too familiar. I'm a little a little taken aback at how like people don't know their history and don't know how familiar this kind of language sounds. Wow, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't know there was a worse way to repeat every aspect of the 20s, but we're finding new ways every day.
It's scary. I don't like it. But you know what? That being said, and saying that like how it impacts the social part of our relationships right now, especially like what I was just talking about is like trying to meet new people. I think that what I've been kind of trying to focus on is, keeping your circle tight and like knowing who you can trust and keeping those people close. And working on those relationships, keeping those like what is the word that people use about their romantic relationships? They have to like this might be wrong. They like want to keep the spark alive in their romantic relationship, but like so like that sentiment, but onto your platonic ones. I don't know what that's called.
It's like keeping the thread going in your platonic relationships, making sure you don't get separated by current events.
Yes. I mean, that and like just figuring out ways to support each other and being there for one another. The most minimum thing that we can do for each other is just be a good space to like talk about it and to feel our feelings and to tell each other that like you're not crazy for feeling scared and like it's we're all going through it and we're not alone in that experience. So at least there's that.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like in this situation, camaraderie is the only antidote to the unhinged.
I love that. What you are
We are in the society, but we are in the society together, and so we'll crawl out of the hell pit as a unit.
oh, I hope so.
Yes.
I hope I'm crossing my fingers that so many of us make it out alive of this.
I know, hopefully, I guess to say that takes a lot of privilege within itself, but fingers crossed, I'm an eternal optimist.
I hear that. That's good. That's what we need. You know,
Yeah, and that's also why I was like, now is the perfect time to launch my little show because I feel like we're dangling on the precipice of being forcibly pushed out of the margins of society. So I was like, why not now? It's as good a time as any to claw my way back in.
where have you been, Erin? What have you been up to?
I know I've been bopping around lately. I've been hacking at the journalism thing for a while. I did start a brand partnership with Nike, which was cool. Because I consider myself the least athletic person ever. But they've been really sweet and they're actually really welcoming to employees and athletes with disabilities. So in September I actually went to Paris for their Paralympics presentation, which was great.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah.
I hate that like I have to feel like in awe that a company welcomes disabled people at all. Like it just like we're still in a place in the world and in time where I'm like just surprised like oh you you want to include disabled people. I wouldn't have expected that. Thank you, question mark.
Yeah, like thank you. And I feel like that impulse is correct because I feel like so much around disability inclusion in particular is still very performative and very much like on paper only. So when you see companies like Nike, and I swear this isn't a plug, they're not paying me, really go the extra mile for that inclusion, it feels revolutionary in that it's actually applied and it's actually practical.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just like, what that brings to mind for me is I was just talking to a friend about the kind of language, it all circles back, it's all related. This is so funny. The language that we were witnessing, right, in stuff like Make America Healthy Again and on on Instagram, I saw somebody being interviewed for like what was their most controversial opinion, and they were like, "Oh, I think euthanasia is way too stigmatized." And I was like, yes, it is a complicated issue. Talk more." And then she started talking, and she was like, "Well, if you cannot take care of yourself, you should be able to euthanize yourself." I'm like, "God damn it! God damn!"
Interesting conversation for like half a second and then she took a hard left.
I'm like, because you know my feels about that and about like the right. Of course you do. Like the nuance of like ableism and how it's related to like the idea of euthanasia. She went like directly there. She did not go for any nuance. She's like, ew, disabled people, get rid of them, and it went immediately to that.
I feel like specifically the lack of nuance around that conversation and that person's willingness to say the quiet part out loud is a reflective to how little we as a collective still understand about disability, that our automatic reaction to hearing about disability is, well, that's gross, they should just die in the year of our Lord 2025.
I was looking at how popular still, like there has been no learning done. How popular still the movie Me Before You is. Do you remember like that was a moment in disability culture when that movie came out?
My power to forget that cultural moment, but yes, tragically, I do remember Me Before You.
And it's still so popular. It's people still. I was looking at like for whatever reason, the algorithm wanted to show me a clip from the movie, and because I'm a curious cat, I'm like, what are the comments like? I'm really hoping that like disability justice movements have progressed enough that the comments are a little bit more uh critical thinking involved, a little bit more thoughtful. No, it was all still like, you know, eating out of the palm of the hand of ableism. It was all still like, oh, he's so good. He's so romantic for like killing himself. Sorry, no spoiler alerts when it comes to ableism. For killing himself because he was disabled and didn't want to hold her back. Like, trigger warning though for the suicide part. But what the fuck?
Yeah, I feel like that movie is not so thinly veiled suicide propaganda for anyone with any kind of physical or mobility difference.
I just can't believe that we're still there today. I feel like so much work has been done for decades and decades um, for disabled people to be humanized, to hopefully be represented better in the media than just like burdens or as like sidekick characters or that like somebody is taking care of, whatever. Like, I thought for whatever reason, maybe it's because I live in a little cultural bubble of like I'm just surrounded by cool disabled people, that if I popped my head out of that bubble, that things would be different on the outside. And it's not. People still like they it's gotten worse a little bit. I think like those expressions, things have to get worse before they get better. I think we're in the worst part. I think that after the pandemic started in 2020, people really like clutched their pearls and dug their heels in the sand of like fear of disability, um, and disregard of disability. They're like, as long as I'm not one of them, I don't have to worry about them, and I'm not going to, and I'm going to like live my life in a way that doesn't consider disabled community at all. So
Yeah, which is bitterly ironic because the pandemic is arguably the biggest mass disabling event we have in living memory.
yeah, I remember someone like was optimistic about that. Was like, well, maybe now that we are adding so many more people to our community, that maybe like something will happen here, something will change. And we're just a larger number of humans that continually get disregarded and um, treated like what what was that a phrase that came out this week? A parasite class was the expression I believe Elon Musk used.
Talking about us, that's really a pot calling the kettle black moment, no?
I think like it was just anybody. Yes, I wish I don't know if I have the image on me, but he like posted a meme where this pretty young blonde actress is like smiling, and the quote was something like, me with all these changes because I'm not part of the parasite class.
Yeah, yeah, that tracks, but it's still very deflating.
I'm a little speechless all over again just thinking about it. I wish I could pull it up. I wonder if I could Google it because I don't want to misquote on that either, but well, I can show it to you here, kind of. So that's the post, and I can send it to you. And he wrote, "Why 90% of America loves Doge?" Cry laughing emoji, and a smiling young, beautiful blonde woman, an actress. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. Wait, I do maybe. Sydney Sweeney. I know they used that image without her consent, but
We didn't get dragged into this, not my wife.
and it says watching Trump slash federal programs, knowing it doesn't affect you because you're not a member of the parasite class. That is the full thing.
Parasite class for life, baby!
Oh my God. Like, they keep coming up. I've been surrounded by really cool like community names and things that could count as both community names and band names at the same time, like Parasite Class. I love it. Put it on a shirt.
Copyright that merch right now. It's gonna be t-shirts, it's gonna be tote bags, it's gonna be snapback.
100%. Parasite Class. What else? I was also watching because Section 504 is currently being threatened in 17 states. So I was rewatching some of the documentary footage we have of the Section 504 sit-ins, and the reporters had name after name that just thrilled me. I was like, iconic. An army of cripples have taken over the federal building. What was the other one? An army of cripples. Which again, I'm telling you, that's another shirt.
Write that down, write that down.
Yes, and I think there was like a couple others that are not coming to me right now, but I was like, wow. Sometimes the ables are creative.
Yeah, I was gonna say, based on all this talk about getting rid of us, I feel like another sick merch line would be disposable divas.
I do love that.
Yeah,
Disposable diva. Do love that.
like like your face. If we're gonna be erased, at least we'll look fabulous while being erased.
As long as, it takes more than just a good phrase for a shirt. The shirt has to look good too.
Don't worry, disposable divas will be written in all biodegradable glitter, so don't worry.
I love that. Damn, I love us. It's such a damn shame that like the global majority doesn't. but I love us so much.
But in a way, it's really forced me to sort of mature and realize myself could a lot faster because at a certain point you realize, damn, it's only me. Like I'm the only one holding my own hand, and so I can't wait for the exterior validation and I can't wait for exterior rescue because I am my biggest cheerleader at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And for one another. I say that just because I am a very like hyper independent person, aka traumatized person, and like I'm always like me alone, I can do it myself. But like, um, yeah, I've been definitely been learning recently like the power of community and the power of like accepting help from others. So while I will always be my biggest cheerleader, I'm definitely also making room for like other people to be cheerleaders too.
And that's really healthy, right? I feel like there's a balance. I feel like part of my own reactionism to physiologically depending on everybody else for my biological needs is to think, well, okay, instead I'll be emotionally self-sufficient and that's how I'll counterbalance it and that's how I'll quote unquote make up for being a burden to the people in my life, but ultimately we cannot be a single solitary system unto ourselves. We need the other planets in there too.
Yes. Oh, that was a beautiful way to put it. Yep. Yeah, I've been learning that too. And it's hard. It's hard because it's also letting people help you and not being ashamed of that is, you know, also part of being able to trust people too. So there's just so much entangled in that within our own like personal egos and trying to like kind of soothe that and heal that into like a space where um, we don't force ourselves into an unnecessary isolation um, due to our own pride.
Yeah, and I also feel like there's this fundamentally incorrect and misguided notion that the death of the ego is inherently a bad thing and that it occurs the second that you require help from other people because we've conflated that with losing all the boundaries of your agency as a person.
Mm,
Whereas when you look at it in a different way, osmotically, it can actually enhance your agency because you you get love and support flowing in from so many outside sources. And even though it fundamentally changes who you are, it can also be for the better and in service of making you more robust.
100%. It comes to mind something else that we kind of did as a community together. Do you recall another flashback? Hashtag hot person in a wheelchair.
Yeah, another day. You're welcome, by the way. And I know you did too.
I was thinking about that recently too, and how like so for anyone watching that doesn't know, a pretty like popular online person said there's nothing sadder than a hot person in a wheelchair on once upon a Twitter. And that was not cool at all. So I remember my response to that tweet was like a sexy photo of myself and going, okay, cry about it then.
I
Um,
I know you're lost, babe. I'm so sorry for you.
I couldn't believe the phrasing of it just like totally opened itself up for that. Like there's nothing sadder than a hot person in a wheelchair. Okay, go ahead and cry in your little corner, little baby. And then like and making it into a hashtag as hashtag hot person in wheelchair, and then like a bunch of us had beautiful, sexy photos on the internet in our wheelchairs. The more we make ourselves more visible in that way, um, it always, I always see it affect someone who is dealing with internalized ableism and going, oh, wow. Um, I didn't realize that I could feel that way about my body while I use mobility aid. Um, I think I recently saw, again, chronically online person, um, a comment response to a video of a compilation of disabled folks dancing to a song. And one of the comments said, wow, how are you so confident? I feel so embarrassed about using my mobility aid and I feel really ashamed about it. So like it's keeping me from leaving the house sometimes. And seeing that comment, I know that that person who saw a compilation of disabled people feeling themselves and having a good time was affected by that is going to start, is going to like plant the seed and hopefully help that person to find their own self confidence and their own self love, um, and hopefully guide them to disability community itself. Because what happens a lot with like really really heavy internalized ableism as a disabled person is people who feel very isolated and don't have any community at all. When you feel alone and you feel strange and you feel like, you know nobody could possibly understand what you're feeling, um, that isolated feeling is gonna mess you up. Is gonna be very depressing, very isolating. When you find community and you realize that you're not alone, and you realize that there's other people who have, um, what's that map word that I'm looking for? Have is it treaded a path? Have created a path. Um,
Navigate, or trailblaze, navigate.
Trailblaze. That's the word I was looking for. Yes. Have already trailblazed ahead of you, and so you can just follow that path. And thank you to the internet for allowing us to all find each other in this way.
That's part of the reason why I decided to name my show Don't Make It Weird, because it's calling out the ableism that I and so many other people encounter in a daily space. Is that people just say so much shit to me, and I realize that they're the ones making the situation uncomfortable.
I have like a whole menu of like bizarro things that people have said to me. Um, since I've started using a wheelchair, since not become chronically ill, because I have Ehlers-Danlos and that's genetic, and I've
Yeah,
had it my whole life, but I had a big health decline and an ability decline when I was in my early 20s. So ever since that kind of transition of time, yeah, people have been so messed up. Like one of my like the first ones that occurred to me is when I this was awful. When I first started using a wheelchair after like this big operation that I had, and I didn't have a wheelchair accessible car, and I was still using like crutches and getting into a manual wheelchair. A person saw me do that, like saw me get out of the car, struggle get out of the car and get put into a manual wheelchair, and me push myself into a store, and came up to me to stop me and say, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know if you lost some weight, you probably wouldn't need that wheelchair." And me, also, it's just such a like divine thing to like say to me, because I am a survivor of eating disorder and body dysmorphic disorder. So like to imply with that language, if you lost weight, implying that I'm, fat, whatever. I was like very confused about how people perceive me.
yeah. It's like, who solicited that opinion, and what made you think it was a good idea to say it out loud? So many questions.
So many questions, and I wish I could say that I had anything like sassy comeback to say. I was really just taken off guard, and I had just started using a wheelchair, so I didn't feel very confident either. I was still I don't know if this is like the most common experience, but like my first time going using a wheelchair specifically, my self-esteem went really low, because I knew that as a biped, as a walking person prior, I knew the kind of attention that a wheelchair draws. I knew that whenever like I was in a space and there was a wheelchair user in the space, that kind of all eyes turned to look at the wheelchair. All of a sudden I was using it, and so I felt that anxiety in my chest. I was like, I'm going to go into this store using my wheelchair and everyone's going to stare at me. And so I didn't want my head to be up in case I caught anybody's eyes. So I kept my head down. Like I was really, this didn't last too long. This lasted me maybe 2 weeks before I was like, remember who the fuck you are.
Yeah,
It lasted like 2 weeks, but like in the first 2 weeks, it was a hard adjustment, and I was like very like low self esteem. And in the middle of that low self esteem, that lady had the audacity to come up to me and be like, "If you lost weight, you would need that chair." And I'm like shy and having a lack of confidence and like twiddling my fingers, like, well, actually, I have a condition that she goes, yeah, 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 I'm sure. But just so you know, if you lost some weight, you probably wouldn't need that chair. And then she walks away. She just doubled down. Even when I tried to explain that I literally have a medical condition, it's memorable because it's like my first mean thing somebody said to me when I was using a wheelchair.
Just the fact that people can travel unquestioned through the world with that level of audacity never ceases to amaze me.
It is what it is. And then all the cliche stuff. People like, they see that you use mobility aid, they see that you have a health condition, and it makes them uncomfortable, so they immediately they assume you're uncomfortable, right, with the situation, and so they come up to you and are like, "Oh my God, well, have you tried this? Have you have you tried this medication? Have you tried yoga? Have you tried blah, blah, blah?" All these things will surely make you not disabled anymore.
Yeah, like thanks, buddy. If I had thought of that a decade or so ago, I would have really saved myself some time. Like, obviously, we know our own bodies and we know what treatments work and which don't work. We're not just wandering around hoping for some sage person to come deposit wisdom to us.
I just wish people had a little bit more tact, just a little bit, because it's not solely happening to disabled people. But it does happen to us a lot that people give this unsolicited advice. And when it has to do with your health and your body, like that's a very sensitive fucking topic. Like you should treat that with some sensitivity and tact. It should be like, hey, if you're ever in the mood to talk about like this program that I know about or whatever, like that this is something I found really helpful or my friend found really helpful, if you're up to hearing about it. That is so much more tactful than just like assuming. I have not attempted any kind of medical treatment before.
Yeah, like thank you. I've never had a doctor before this very moment. I'm so lucky you just happened to waltz into my life with your supplement suggestion, and now my life will be forever changed.
I mean, this totally like circles back to the Maha stuff too. So like I'm glad that it finally has a freaking name, because up until now I've just been referring to it as the wellness to alt-right pipeline, where they say we just want everybody to be healthy, but what you really mean is eugenics. What you really mean is like making sure that only healthy people survive and or non-disabled people survive. And they are willing to do everything but listen to disabled people. What was that like? Did Was there like a weird rumor to like try to use cleaning fluid as an antidote for COVID? To like swallow cleaning fluid? I don't remember. It was
Yeah, it was inject yourself with bleach that'll clear up the COVID infection.
willing to do literally anything besides listen to disabled people and scientists and people who have like done peer-reviewed research.
Yeah, like people are so desperate to assume that they know better about not just their own health but other people's health that they'll risk death just to avoid the slim possibility that they might have long-term effects or become disabled.
Well, I think that that can be kind of narrowed down into a couple of things too, where at first I thought it was just ego. I thought that people just kind of like need to feel like they know all the answers. Um, but then on second thought, I'm like, you know what? That need to like know all the answers is also a weird form of internalized ableism. Like they need to feel smart. They feel like they know better than you. And it's probably people who, if I may put my little like psychologist hat on, throughout their lives were made to feel um, quote unquote dumb. And they were made to feel like they didn't have a lot to offer intellectually. And so then they reach a point in their adulthood where they are just, again, burying their heels and are like, no, 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 no. I know what I'm talking about. When they don't know what they're talking about because they haven't bothered to research at all. They believe what they want to believe and then they try to spread that as truth. They spread misinformation and disinformation for their own benefit and ultimately their own ego. So that's kind of what I perceive to be Maha in a nutshell.
And I think it also speaks to the idea that people are so fearful of disability in life with a disability that they'll build an entire exclusionary political movement around keeping disabled people out so they can ignore the reality that disability impacts all of us, and the only thing separating us from disability is time.
Mhm. Yeah, for so many of us, and some of us just like don't even. And when I say us, I mean human beings entirely. Like don't even kind of register already having disabilities. Like if you have like any kind of health divergency is technically under the disability umbrella, including sometimes I look around and I see how many people need glasses to see and I'm like that's a disability. If you lose your glasses, if your glasses break and you can't see, you are visually impaired. Like that is a disability and your glasses are helping you in the same way that my wheelchair helps me to get around. Like it's the same thing. It's an assistive aid. Um and we've just, successfully normalized one, which is glasses, so much more than other mobility aids and other assistive devices. And that's a nuanced conversation. Disability itself, as it is so socially constructed. We like socially decide what counts as a disability and what doesn't because we have said that like the need for glasses, so many folks who need glasses to see do not count themselves as disabled, you know? So it's definitely a very nuanced conversation about like identity and what counts and doesn't count and all that stuff.
Such a larger conversation, and it's unfortunate because socially we are so ill-equipped to talk about any divergency difference whatsoever that we don't even have the vocabulary to start that dialogue.
I don't know that the vocabulary doesn't exist. Perhaps it does, and I don't know. But uh, where I'm sitting, it is tough to even start that conversation for sure.
Yeah, it's it's just it's a really rough dialogue to know how to start because the topics within themselves are so stigmatized.
Yes, I mean, because I don't feel like it would be easy to like you know guide someone or suggest to someone who wears glasses that they might be part of the disability community.
I knew the sad thing is they would probably react pretty poorly to that because again we've internalized the idea that it's such such a bad and undesirable thing to be disabled.
Meanwhile, I'm in the the bubble in the community where I'm like everyone I know is disabled to the extent that like I forget that like able
People,
to identifying people exist.
yeah, you forget that not everyone is disabled.
Except for when I go out in public and abled are mean to me. Because I live in a house full of disabled people too. Like literally, it's not. It feels segregated sometimes, socially segregated. Um, that I don't find myself interacting with a lot of people who I identify as abled. I don't know. And that social segregation, it's aided by a lot of other things. When I say that, I'm also referring to like, elementary school when I haven't been in school for a long time, but like in like public school, elementary school, middle, high school, um, they would separate disabled kids from the able kids. And it really like reinforced this idea that disabled kids were different from the other kids and really affected how the abled kids viewed them and how they viewed disability overall. Like it was something that kept you isolated, that you didn't want to be a part of. All the way we kind of socially interact with one another is so reinforced by like larger systems.
Yeah, and I feel like the fact that kids are introduced to that hierarchy of ableism from the second they enter into public education really encourages those biases to embed themselves in the way they operate socially and professionally for the rest of their lives.
Mhm. Which also, to circle back to a serious note about the threat of Section 504, without it, we might revert back to a very like separate but equal thing in regards to public schools, where like they try to like shove all disabled students into one school on their own without um, any like abled peers. And so it would like further socially segregate them, not just that they're in different parts of the schools, but different schools entirely. Or it really depends on how much damage it can do regarding physical access to schools and IEPs and programs for disabled students individually. We have to continue to keep raising awareness about that and make sure that we do everything we can to protect it.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel like that's our responsibility to sort of protect the next generation and somehow make it so that the trajectory continues of each successive generation having to face less ableism than the one before it, even though that feels sort of tragically impossible and out of reach right now. It should be it shouldn't be aspirational, it should be the norm, but tragically as we see, it's still something that we have to be fighting for.
I have hope. I love your optimism, and I feel a sense of optimism in that way too. I'm like, it can't just get worse and worse until everything goes dark. I think slash hope that what we're seeing right now is that moment of it has to get worse before it gets better. And if I were to look at especially the US as a collective, as a whole, and visualize it as like one being, that I think the expression is right, that the US is having like a dark night of the soul. I think that's what the expression is, that where like it's in its worst moment and it has to take a look at itself in the mirror. And once it's able to confront those things, then it can start to heal and build and change. Um, as a parallel to like, human psychology and therapy that the country would hopefully experience something similar.
Well, I have my fingers crossed, but based on the nosedive that we're currently doing, it feels naive at best to
No.
be hope, hopeful for a real collective rallying of our collective consciousness. But stranger things have happened, so I guess you've got to keep that faith alive.
Yeah,
Oh,
100%.
also, I meant to say, did you want to talk about your new show, The Art of Access, or yet to be titled?
Yes, I have been collecting tips from my personal life of like how I make things accessible to me, from like how I've made my car accessible to me, my bedroom, doing stuff in the kitchen or cleaning up around the house, doing chores. and wanting to showcase like any kind of tools or hacks that I use. Uh, Tentatively titled The Art of Access because aesthetic is really important to me. So I like things to be cute and accessible at the same time. I don't like things to like look too like, you know, mechanical and or boring or just like kind of unflattering or unstylish. I like for things to be very like aesthetic and pretty and cute and for them to be functional as well. So that is a series that I'm currently working on behind the scenes for my social media channels for Instagram and for YouTube. And I'm also currently I have been for a long time, but I'm finally almost to the end of it. Working on a semi-fictional screenplay about four queer disabled femmes and their journeys with internalized ableism and ableism in their exterior lives, and basically just how they navigate like life, love, dating, and ableism.
Nice, you had me at queer femmes.
Yes, it's been really fun to write, and like the way I have it is set up into like um if it were a TV show, it has like four seasons and I've just been struggling to write it, and now like season one would be like 8 episodes and I'm on 5 out of 8. So we'll see. It's tentatively titled Pretty Sick. And
Talk about hardcore band name.
and I feel like now that it's 5 out of 8, like I can definitely start to talk about it a little bit more as well.
Yeah, well, definitely like hit me up if you're looking for casting.
I would love that.
Have you been solicited to audition for Radical?
Hmm.
Yeah, I did too.
That's so exciting. I hope that a bunch of us can be in it and like get to hang out.
Feels really resonant right now. It feels like something that we have to bring up and talk about right now in specificity in the current cultural moment.
Yes. I let them know. I emailed them back. I said, look, even if it's not for any particular role, then please let me be a part of this in some way.
It's fine. It would be sick if you could be like on the crew or something.
Yeah, like let me do something because this is such a cool project and I love Judy Human and like she means so much to like all of us.
Yeah.
So it would be awesome. And just in general, I feel like and hearing that you got solicited to audition as well, I'm like, "Oh my God, this could really be our own freaking summer camp if they let us all get in there. Let us in."
Like, are we all gonna have to bring our own people? Like, I don't know. It'll just have to be like a massive operation that they put us on, like a little loving farm.
I would just, you have no idea how much like I emotionally need something like that right now. Like I was watching Crip Camp also, right, about Camp Jeanette.
Yeah.
I just want to be surrounded by even more cool disabled people and like just sit in that beautiful euphoric solidarity with one another and have a good time.
Yeah, and I feel like it would be a moment of disabled solidarity that I haven't felt since childhood. When I also went to a camp, summer camp for children with disabilities, so those spaces, I feel like especially because there's such a big conversation around medical intervention as children, regardless of your diagnosis, that one day you turn 18 or 21 or 25 or whatever the cutoff is for community, and you just wake up and you feel alone. So the idea that stuff like this set of Radical would give us the opportunity to recreate those bonds would be really special.
I 100% agree. I really, well, I'm glad that that came up because, God, manifesty.
Shitty actress, but I will get better for this role, I promise.
Yeah. I like I said, I really hope that it happens and that a bunch of us that, are out here creating visibility and doing the work get the opportunity to like be a part of that project.
I keep refreshing my email every day, being like, come on.
If not, let me say this. If not, then I'd love to figure out an alternative to that because now that like having this conversation with you, um, I see that that's something that maybe something that people want, and I love hosting things. So I would love to figure out even on our own how we can get folks together.
Seriously, if you need help with any creative project, just know that I am available.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've how we were talking about how like I'm working on not being so hyper independent and letting people help. Like
yeah.
this project has been one of them. I think I feel like I've sabotaged myself in a little bit, like with having such a large writing project and being so determined of to like I have to do this by myself. I have to do this by myself. I cannot like trust other people to like look at it or touch it or whatever. And like it's taken me forever because of that, I'm sure. So thank you for offering because like I definitely I know logically that it can only be better if I open myself up to collaboration instead of trying to do everything on my own.
Exactly, exactly. Also, I meant to say, do you think we're done? Um, do you think we're done recording? Because I'm gonna stop recording because I have another recommendation for you about Pretty Thick.
Sure. Do you want to do like an outro before you stop
Oh
recording?
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm so new to this. Like, I'm already like, what's an outro? But yeah, let's do it. What do you want to say?
Something like, well, it's been great talking to you. What are your socials? And just like an outro is very much like you choose. You can be like, and I'll see y'all next time or whatever.
Yeah, that's actually a good question, and obviously, I want to cater to you. First of all, thank you for being willing to put these clips on your feed. Because basically, I'm like, okay, my only strategy for audience growth is to lean on my friends that have followings because they're already cool, and like, why not just piggyback off of their general aura? But yes. So if I were to think of an outro, I would just say, it's always great to surround myself with other disabled baddies and to just really feed off that energy. So being in your presence has truly been a present and a delight. So thank you for that.
Erin, you rock. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so glad that we could have this chance to talk with one another.
Yes, and if any of your audience would like to follow the show as it develops, our socials are at Don't Make It Weird Show on Instagram and TikTok.
Awesome. And my socials are at Annie Elaney for anyone who would like to follow me over there.
Cool.